Chile, when I tell you the devil works hard, but white people work harder, y'all. So somebody posted on Facebook. They said, "Oh, how is all that anti-DEI going for y'all? Because 2025 is turning out to be the blackest year ever, right?" And they had a picture of like the movie Sinners and Beyonce performing at her Cowboy Carter tour, and two other pictures I forget, right? So some white person commented, and they were like, "Oh, how is Beyonce doing cultural appropriation helping you, right?" So then people were replying like, "Culturally appropriating what? Like, what are you talking about?" Why another white person come to the post and said, "Country music came from Scotland and Scandinavian cultures." Y'all, when I tell y'all, like, at some point you just have to laugh. Let me tell you guys a story. And I'm pretty sure I still have this video up, so I'll put the link to it up here so you guys can click on it and go and watch it. But I think it was 2 years ago. I don't think it was last year. For Black History Month, I made a video about this group called the Dukes of Dixie Land. So this was a group of white guys who made Dixie Land music back in like, I think they started maybe in the 1930s. I don't know, somewhere around there, right? And I got a bunch of their records from this secondhand shop that I go to, right? So what initially drew me in is that one of their records had a Confederate flag on it. Whenever I see something like that, I always buy it because, you know, I'm looking for historical stuff, right? So after that, I kept collecting their records. And let me tell you the funniest thing ever that I found, right? So in the back of their records, there was always like, you know, some background story, right? You know, so like on the back of one record, it might be like, "Oh, the Dukes of Dixieland, you know, started when they met each other and blah, blah, blah." Then the back of another record might say, "Oh, yeah, you know, whatever," right? And I found the funniest thing, right? So on the back of one of the earlier records, they said, "Oh, Dixieland music was started by white people. There was a Confederate song called something, I Wish I Was in Dixie," something, I forget, right? Now, I don't think it was I Wish I Was in Dixie because that's the Confederate national anthem that came later, right? But they quite literally said, "Oh, Dixieland music started when this white guy composed this song. That was the first Dixieland song," right? Then on one of their like middle records, they said, "Oh, well, you know, Dixieland music might have had some black influences, but, you know, black people, they didn't like they primitive instruments, so they used our so-and-so and so, so it's really our shit," right? Then on one of the later albums, they straight up admitted, "Yeah, black people created this. In fact, I believe they even said that a black person coined the term Dixieland." So I believe this black person was sold to a plantation called Dixie's Plantation, right? And they would call the plantation Dixie's Land or something, right? And that's who actually coined this term, right? And it was funny to see the progress, right? On the earlier records, they straight up denied any black influence to it at all. Then on the middle records, they were kind of getting kind of lukewarm. "Yeah, maybe we did kind of steal this from black folks." And then finally they acknowledged, "Yeah, pretty much black people created this shit. They started the music, they coined the term, and we just stole it," right? And it was so funny because all of these records were by the same group. It's not like I was looking at different records from different groups. No, these were the same people. I'm just laughing because white people trying to take credit for stuff that is clearly not theirs is nothing new. It's nothing new. Whenever white people do something like this or anything else, I understand that this is not anything they just started. No, this is something they've been doing forever. Now, it's just easier to catch them in the act because we live in a world of information, right? There's knowledge all around us, right? So it's easier to catch them in these lies, right? And it's funny because, again, this is something they've always done and they haven't really acclimated to the times. Right now we live in the present day and they're still doing the stuff they did in the 1700s when people didn't have access to this information and couldn't just, you know, clock their tea on it, right? And again, it's hilarious because white people, right? This is the thing about white people. They will demonize black culture to the point where black people don't even want it, right? And then when black people toss it aside, that's when white people say, "Actually, we invented this, my home diggity." Like, Y'all see what they did with Ebonics, right? AAVE is his new, politically correct name, right? But white people dogged Ebonics for centuries. The way that black Americans talk, white people called it uneducated, ignorant, stupid, so and so and so. It was never viewed as its own distinct dialect with complex grammatical rules that arose from the combinations of various, interferences from African languages, a bunch of different African languages on English when we were learning English and stuff. No, it was never viewed as the rich dialect that it was by white people. Absolutely not. They always dragged it, called it ignorant, stupid. Black people are uneducated for speaking it, so and so and so, right? To the point where black people would stop speaking it and they would talk white, so to speak, right? Because that was the only way to make it in this world, right? The only way to make it to get a good job. If you get a phone interview, what are you going to do on the phone? You're going to talk like a white person, right? You're going to code switch, right? It got to the point where black people cast their own dialect aside because the way white people dragged it made it impossible for us to be successful while using it, right? And then what happened when we stopped using it, right? What happened then? Now you got white people talking about Ebonics as Gen Z slang. Now you got white folks on the internet talking about clock that T, clock it home, diggity. They Ebonicsing it up, right? And when you call them out on that, they say, oh, well, actually, the habitual B comes from the Scottish. Yeah, the Scottish say, I be going to the park. Like, y'all, like, does this not sound familiar? Let me tell you something that I've noticed as a black American, right? And I've noticed that it comes from all sides. It's not just white people, right? A lot of different groups like to take claim for the positive aspects of our culture, but they cool with letting us keep all the negatives. Oh, they real cool with that, right? So the first example is white people. They sitting here talking about they created country music and this, that, and so and so and so. But let's think of a negative part of our culture. Are white people trying to take credit for the fact that there are fatherless homes in the black American community? No, they're not trying to take credit for that, even though it is their damn fault because they the ones who invented all this school to prison pipeline and flooded the black community with drugs and shit. No, they're not taking credit for that, even though it is actually their fault, right? But they'll take credit for the good parts of our culture, right? But like I said, it's not even just white people. I notice Africans do this as well. So it honestly happens a lot with music, right? Africans will say, oh, technically this musical genre y'all created, that's actually our genre because y'all used African instruments to create it. Well, bitch, I mean, my ancestors were fucking African. So like what? So clearly they came here and they made the same instruments and like what does that have to do with your stupid ass? Because at that point we'd already, branched off. Like, what are you saying, right? But again, it's the exact same thing. They'll sit there and take credit for the positives, but do you think they taking credit for black Americans have this many people locked up in jail or whatever? No, they're not taking credit for that. They're not going to say, oh, that's because y'all got that bad attitude from us. No, they're not taking credit for none of the bad shit. None of the bad shit ever, right? And again, it's like, as a black American, I feel like a lot of times we be stuck between a rock and a hard place. And it's really not even just white people and Africans. You got Jamaicans claiming they invented hip-hop. Mind you, that makes no sense because the Jamaican elders straight up admit, oh yeah, we used to listen to black American radio stations. In fact, all of y'all reggae and shit is based off of our music. In fact, but like, let's not even get into all that, right? You got Jamaicans claiming they invented hip hop. You got Fat Joe and the mestiza Hispanics claiming they also invented hip hop and shit. You got Koreans claiming that K-pop ain't got nothing to do with black American music, even though they literally just stole black American music and put it into Korean. Like, the whole world is constantly taking bits and pieces of black American culture and swearing that they came up with it. Like, it's wild. It's like, y'all, it's weird. It's weird. And I don't know. I can't really explain it because, like, what's with the obsession with us? Like, don't get me wrong. I understand that we some bad bitches, but, like, it's definitely odd